So we'll talk about, in general, what is AI, how AI affects audience trust, where is it already being used in our industry, and where and how are we likely to see it used next. We'll also talk about how AI intersects with journalistic ethics. So what is AI? I mean, I'm looking around the room, I see people, a wide range of ages, but as a Gen Xer, even though I answer questions about AI in 2024, this is what I think of.
Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
No, not at all.
I've wondered whether you might be having some second thoughts about the mission.
How do you mean?
Rumors about something being dug up on the moon. I never gave these stories much credence, but particularly in view of some of the other things that have happened, I find them difficult to put out of my mind.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
All right. So this movie came out in 1968, so even before I was born as a Gen Xer, and it still rings so true. So we know when we're told, and we kind of believe maybe, that AI tools can help improve our product, can help us do more with less, can help us customize and improve the experience of our magazines, whether online or in print, in terms of production, in terms of what we can give to them. It's supposed to help us improve what we can offer our audiences, and yet we have this fear, and it's not for nothing. So with that, I'm gonna jump right into what is AI? So let's go back to the basics, and apologies if this is too basic for some of you, but I found it really useful to just sort of go back to what is AI, and according to Britannica, it is the ability of a digital computer or computer-controlled robot to perform tasks commonly associated with intelligent beings. So there's a lot to break down in there, actually. So I think, you know, the biggest fear we have when we're looking at 2001: A Space Odyssey is that the AI will become human, will have its own decision-making power. And we sort of see that a little bit. It looks like when an AI hallucinates, if you've heard, is everyone aware of that term? It sort of seems like they're taking on their own will, but they're not thinking. They mimic what they've learned from us. And that sort of seems like a guardrail, but it can also open up room for error, which we'll get into in a bit. So what does AI look like in our world? I'm gonna rapid fire a few things. Like, we intersect with AI all the time. So search engines, I mean, we use them all the time, employ AI. A chatbot is an example of an AI. This is from my internet and mobile provider, and I get really annoyed when I have to use this chatbot. This is what Netflix thinks that I should, I don't know how accurate this is actually, but this is the algorithm that Netflix uses to determine what it thinks I should watch next. So Bad Moms Christmas, I don't know, okay, maybe. Chef's Table, yes, nobody wants this. I already watched it, thanks for being a bad boyfriend, Netflix, you weren't paying attention. Martha, 100%. I have no idea what those other two things are. So in that case, it's not really improving my experience the way it's supposed to. I use this organic food bin delivery, and any e-commerce that you intersect with is a use of AI. This is an interesting story, and if you're interested, I can share this deck. I've got a lot of links for more information. But Nutella decided, I don't know if you remember, several years ago, Nutella had these pop-ups where you could get a label with your name on it. That was really, really successful for them. And like, how can we scale this? I know, we are going to get an algorithm to design 7 million unique Nutella labels. And all 7 million sold out in 1 month. So that's kind of best use case of AI in marketing. So generally speaking, and this is from a really great Forbes article, that's a good sort of foundation in AI. You know, 3 main things that are compelling about using AI. Convenience. So as I mentioned earlier, tools that speed up processes, that help us do more with less, that make navigation easier for our audiences. Customization. You know, when you are on a website and you see you've read an article and a list of links comes up that says suggested for you. That's AI, customization, and then efficiency. But on the other side of it, there are things that are unconvincing about AI use. Uncertainty, is it going to work the way we want it to, the way it's promised to? Privacy risk. It's something actually that I hear about quite a bit. As standards editor, I'm kind of the intermediary between the newsroom at the Globe and Mail and audiences. And the Globe and Mail they launched a next layer of recommended for you customization. And I heard from a number of subscribers who said, I don't want this. Like, are you tracking? What else are you tracking? I feel like my privacy is being invaded. I don't want this. How do I turn it off? And loss of control risk. That's on the side of the user. So the Globe and Mail or your publication, you use a plugin and you're leaving a bit of it to the tool itself. And you're giving up some control when you're allowing a tool to provide a function for you. More specifically to our industry, what's unconvincing about AI use. So one of our greatest fears, I think, in our industry is AI content generation, or using AI as a tool in content generation. So AI only knows what it's been fed. So the result of that, if you use AI to generate content, is a high risk of homogenization in the output. Obviously, we don't want that. We want our products to be unique. That's why readers come to us and not somebody else. The devaluation of writers, editors, artists, and graphic designers' skills. So if you are farming out some of these functions to an AI and it costs next to nothing, we're devaluing the unique talent that we've been growing and fostering, and trying to convince our audiences is something they can't get anywhere else. And then there's the potential loss of credibility and audience trust. I touched on some of these points just now, but what do magazine folks fear most about AI? Number one, as I mentioned, it's that AI will replace human content creators. Well, it's happened. I hear from a lot of freelancers who have sort of side gigs with marketing content organizations where they've been told you need to work with this AI and produce twice as many posts as you normally do, or yeah, we don't need you anymore, we're going to use AI to produce our posts. All the way to this example in Krakow, where a radio station fired all of its on-air talent, all of its on-air presenters, and replaced them with AI. So there's a bunch of links. It's an interesting story to unfold, and too much to go through step by step here, but they announced that this was happening. They let go of all of their human staff, replaced them fairly quickly with AI. There was an enormous outcry, disbelief. 23,000 people in Poland signed a petition saying, we don't like this, we don't want AI presenters. And the station said, oh, it was an experiment. See, we meant for this to happen. And they ended the experiment, which they say was supposed to last about 3 months, after about a week. It also happened in Mexico at Grupo Formula, where they haven't replaced human presenters entirely, but they've introduced 2 AI presenters, Nat and Sophie. So Nat is their entertainment news reporter, and Sophie is their politics reporter. I'm going to let you watch a bit of Nat at work.
Hola. Soy Nat, la nueva presentadora de noticias de Grupo Fórmula, la primera de mi tipo en América Latina. Mi rostro, cabello, ropa e incluso mi voz han sido construidos con inteligencia artificial para brindar una experiencia de noticias innovadora y emocionante.
So Nat isn't convincing yet. However, some of these videos have racked up over 1 million views apiece. Some of these posts, which they offer across multiple platforms that they broadcast on. So this is a very poor imitation of life, and yet it's proving successful to this particular platform, which I think is frightening to a lot of people in our business. All right. Another big risk to our journalism and our work is the fact that it's so easy to create a deep fake. And misinformation is spreading because it's easy to create backups for misinformation that you want to spread. This is a Google tool that helps you see if you can tell the difference between what's real and what's AI generated. Which one do we think is AI? Running out of time. 3? This one? 4? Wrong! Oh, who said 3? Who said 3? Great. All right, let's do a couple more. The AI-generated giraffe. 1? Okay, I was saying hearing 3. Nope, 1. Oh, whoever said 1, you were correct. All right, let's do one more. 3? No. Okay. So the point of that was to illustrate how convincing deepfakes and AI-generated images can be. It's really hard to tell, and it gets harder every day. This is another little exercise that I thought would be fun to do. Okay, so click on the person who's real. This is a way of testing, like, if you get a photo supplied, can you tell if it's real or AI?
On the left.
The left?
Right is real.
Right is real?
Yeah.
Okay. No. Oh, right. No, we were right. Okay, let's try that again.
Left.
Incorrect. Let's try one more. Okay, I'm hearing more left, so let's try that. Correct. So, I mean, there are tools that art directors and photo editors can use to try to parse out which ones are real and which are fake, and people who've done a lot of study of AI-generated images start to be able to find tells. Things that are in sharp focus in the background, the fold of someone's clothing, not really appearing the way it would in real life. If you're on social media, I'm sure you've seen some joke ones where people have 6 fingers, or there's a whole series of women eating salad that are just bonkers. But a lot of them are convincing. We had a hard time figuring out. I'll play some of this video. So this link is in the deck as well. But video that's generated by AI used to be pretty easy to tell. So the Mexican online presenter, I think we all could tell right away that she was AI generated. But it's getting better. In the hands of bad actors who have a few resources, it can be really convincing. So we'll just watch a few seconds of this video.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time.
Jordan Peele created this fake video of President Obama to demonstrate how easy it is to put words in someone else's mouth.
Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet.
Not everyone bought it. But the technology behind such frauds is rapidly improving, even as worries increase about their potential for harm. This is your Bloomberg Quick Take on deepfakes. Deepfakes, or realistic-looking fake videos and audio, gained popularity as a means of adding famous actresses into porn scenes. Despite bans on major websites, they remain easy to make and find. They're named for the deep learning artificial intelligence algorithms that make them possible. Input real audio or video of a specific person, the more the better, and the software tries to recognize patterns in speech and movement. Introduce a new element like someone else's face or voice, and a deepfake is born.
It's actually extremely easy to make one of these things. There were just some supposed, breakthroughs from academic researchers who work with this particular kind of machine learning in the past few weeks, which would drastically reduce the amount of video you need actually to create one of these.
Programs like FakeApp, the most popular and widely available for making deepfakes, need dozens of hours of human assistance to create a video that looks like this, rather than this. In August, researchers at Carnegie Mellon revealed software that accurately rendered not just facial features, but changing weather patterns and flowers in bloom. This advance is not yet available to the public. But with increasing capability comes increasing concern.
All right, I'm gonna leave it there. So you can see with some of the iterations, it was very easy to see where a celebrity's face was pasted in. But that first Barack Obama one was like pretty close. It was pretty close. So if you're interested in learning more about how to detect deepfakes and misinformation, there's a great digital investigations newsletter that's free online and curated by a Canadian journalist named Craig Silverman. There are some free AI training tools for journalists, so helping your staff and all of us get better at catching those tells. And there are also tools that can help with that. The Online News Association also offers some training workshops. Some of them you can access for free, some you need to be a member for. So depending on what your budget is and how critical this is for you, you might decide to just hop onto the free access options. Another big fear that we have, I don't think Kat has this fear because she's like, yeah, take our content. But for those of us who are not nonprofit, website and content cloning is a huge concern. It's incredibly common. You don't necessarily find it unless you've got a Google alert or you're just really vigilant in searching it. Often, I'll hear from reporters at the Globe who are Googling something and as a story follow that they're working on, and they'll stumble upon a story of theirs that has been cloned and added to a website that the Globe doesn't have a syndication relationship with. Sometimes it's an entire facsimile website, and it is so easy for bad actors to use AI to do this. There are free tools online. There's some paid tools as well, but it's one of those things like creating a bomb. You Google it, and there's step-by-step instructions. So why would anyone do this? I mean, obviously, free content. If someone's got a site and they're just looking for clicks so that they can get streamed ad revenue, they just want the clicks. They may want to impersonate your site so that they borrow your credibility, or they may use your brand credibility to enact a phishing scam. So not a great thing, but what can you do about it? It's just an example. I Googled website cloning tools, and this is only page one of many that came up. So you can, good old-fashioned, hey, look for if there's a contact on the website that has stolen your content, you can email a request to stop and take down the website or the content that they have stolen. You can get a lawyer acting on your behalf to send a cease and desist letter, or you can file a takedown notice. I've got a link to probably like the premier source of online takedown assistance. They don't do it for free, but they do have a lot of free information that you can access on their website. I won't run this video, but there is a 3-minute video that talks about how to file a takedown notice. It's pretty easy. You do have to just collect some information before you get started. But there are legitimate uses for AI that are actually helpful, that do all the things that we would like it to do, help not reduce the number of staff that we hire, but make their jobs more efficient, allow them to do more with less, hopefully prevent burnout in the process of that. So we're going to look at some examples. So something that I think a lot of our brands struggle with is, especially the bigger you get, having a direct relationship with our audience members. This is particularly true of something as big as the Globe and Mail, where especially young potential audience members look at the Globe and Mail as being a large, faceless corporation. And how do I know I can trust it? I don't trust corporations, I trust people. So one thing a lot of media platforms are doing is showcasing their staff, their contributors. And how do you do that without creating more work for those people? Well, something that's being tried is using a chatbot to answer some of the common questions that your science reporter or your business and investing specialist or whoever might, or your cooking specialist might have. So Peter Singer is an ethicist who gets a lot of the same questions. And he has a website. And he found that he was getting a lot of the same questions, and he had staff that were trying to answer emails. He's just like, oh, this is not a great way to handle this. I'm going to try to create answers for the most common questions I have. And these have to be questions that can be answered in a definitive way. It can't be something that is complex and nuanced. So he selected the common questions that would work. So if you go to this way, and we can try asking it some questions. If you go to this website and you ask it something that is too nuanced, it will just say, I don't have an answer for that. So there's a bit more follow-up that I want to do, but I wanted to have some fun with this. Does anyone have a question for an ethicist? I just had Facebook memories remind me that my younger daughter, when she was 9 or 10, got a concussion and couldn't look at any screens. So a friend of ours had this game called Scruples, which is like so old I barely remember it. But it's a great concept. Someone should bring it back. It's questions, ethically based questions about what would you do if. So she made her own version of Scruples while she couldn't look at screens. And one of the questions was, would you give up sight in one eye if it would allow someone else to see? I was like, oh, that's a good one. So maybe I'll start. Oh, do you have one, Joyce?
Okay. What should you do if you see someone stealing food at the grocery store?
Oh, good.
I know what the answer is.
What should you do if you see someone? Let's see if it answers it. Oh, he's thinking. Oh. Okay. Can you read it, or do you want me to read it out? Seeing someone steal food can evoke a variety of ethical considerations. It's important to consider the context. 1, understand the situation. Is the person stealing out of necessity, such as hunger or inability to afford food? 2, consider the consequences. Reporting them could lead to legal trouble for them, but ignoring it might not address underlying issues. 3, offer help. If you feel safe and comfortable, you might consider offering to buy the food for them or directing them to local resources that can help. 4, reflect on systemic issues. Consider why people might be driven to such actions and what societal changes could help prevent these situations. And then he puts it back to us. So I don't know, thoughts on, we could do one more if you enjoyed that, yeah.
Okay, so how do I determine if a person is stealing food out of necessity or
Yeah. So there, like you've just recognized the limitation of this interaction, right? Ask it that. Okay. Oh, I see. How can I tell if the person? Oh, that's not, oh, okay. Ha, that's what Peter Singer AI is saying. Determining someone's motives can be challenging, as it's not always clear why someone might be stealing. However, there are a few things you might consider. Observe their behavior. Are they taking basic necessities like bread or milk, or are they taking luxury items? This can sometimes indicate necessity. I don't know that I agree with that. Look for signs of distress. Do they seem anxious or desperate? This could suggest they are in need. Consider the context. Are you in an area with a high level of poverty or homelessness? This might increase the likelihood of necessity-driven theft. Engage in conversation. If you feel safe, you could approach them and offer assistance. This might provide more insight into their situation. Ultimately, without directly asking, it can be difficult to know for sure. What are your thoughts on approaching someone in this situation? So interesting format in that it encourages continued engagement with this chatbot by throwing it back to you. I actually stumbled upon this because I listened to a New York Times weekly feature called The Interview, and Peter Singer was featured on it. And the reporter at the New York Times actually challenged him on something. So they always do, I don't know if anyone listens to that, but they do it in two parts. There's the first 2/3 of the interview are like broadcast first, they do a break, and then after the break, it's a follow-up to the first interview. So in the follow-up, the New York Times journalist said, oh, okay, I went to your chatbot and I asked it a question that I asked you, and it said that it couldn't answer it. Actually, this has been a few months, so maybe he's added it. So in the first part of the interview, the New York Times journalist asked, because Peter Singer generally believes in making the choice that does the most good for the largest number of people. So the question was, you're thrown off a boat with a bunch of other people and you're a strong swimmer. You have the ability to swim to your left and save your own daughter, or swim to the right and save 2 people. Do you let your daughter drown and save the 2 people you don't know? And Peter Singer said, well, okay, my ethics allows for familial love and protection, so I would save my daughter. But the AI at the time did not answer that. He said, oh, okay, well, that's a problem. I'm going to talk to the developers about that. So not perfect. It's not perfect. But there are a few examples of this. The Globe and Mail recently launched a similar chatbot about there's an environmental project that is funded by a partner. And the environment editor and his reporters came up with a number of answers. So it's a similar thing, like there are a limited number of questions that it can answer. And if it doesn't have an answer, it'll say, sorry, I can't answer that for you right now. So upside, there's interactivity. Downside, there's the potential for somebody to get really annoyed because their question's not getting answered. So this is the Walrus uses, you can see, it doesn't say that it's an AI voice, but the branding of their partner, Doris, is there. You could Google it, but you would have to think too. It gives the option of another way into your content for people who maybe are not a 3,500 word feature reader. I know, like, my kids grew up with me working in magazines, and they don't read magazines, but they would listen to an article. So it's another way in. It doesn't cost that much. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes it doesn't sound great. Its cadence is wrong, or it puts emphasis on the wrong words, but it gets the job done. It's instantaneous, and it allows you to play at another platform. Image generation is maybe one of the most controversial uses. Maclean's used a tool called Imagine to create the image for this issue, which was AI themed. It really depends on what kind of magazine you are. So the Globe and Mail and other news first organizations generally already had a rule in place that said you cannot do anything to a photo other than light balancing. You can't change anything about a photo if it's accompanying a news story. If it's accompanying a feature. You can incorporate other features, but you have to call it a photo illustration. I think magazines that are sort of more general interest or not news-based have a wider latitude to experiment with AI tools for image generation. But always transparency is important. I think, you know, if we're asking readers to come to us and not another brand or another platform, we need to give them reasons. And is there a reason besides, you know, I don't want to pay for an illustration, or I don't have the budget? Like, there are lots of things. We're very resourceful people. Going to an AI for all of your illustrations might seem to solve a problem, but it could create a problem in that, well, I could have done this myself, like, or that I don't understand these illustrations. They don't look like what I'm used to from this magazine that I love. It's changed and I don't like it. There's a lot of risk involved in it. So again, just always being transparent with your audience if you're going to try something, or if you've changed your framework. You need to let them in on that. I think, you know, for those of us who've been in the business a long time, we would just like do a redesign. Like, oh, if you don't like it, well, I don't know, we're confident you're gonna like it. And there's so much more competition that we just cannot afford to do that. So it has to feel like a conversation you're having with your audience. Something that different newsrooms and reporters and journalists are using to different degrees are listed on this page. So research and data scraping, I mean, anyone who is doing data journalism where you're consolidating huge volumes of information, population growth, I mean, climate change, you can do so much more quickly using an AI tool to data scrape and to consolidate information. But again, you need to know enough to know if your AI is wrong. If you don't have a sense of, you know, where the information is going to lead because you've done enough of the legwork yourself, you're in danger of publishing something that will make you look very foolish. A lot of people have been using transcription tools for a long time. Otter is probably the best known, and it can save hours of transcribing. The downside being that journalism students don't get offers to transcribe people's tapes. One of the sort of downsides to AI in our industry and in others is the on-ramp. It's taking the place of the on-ramp of a lot of early career journalists and magazine folks. In law, it's really questioning, like, what does the articling year for lawyers in training look like now that AI can do a lot of things that articling students did? I think we touched on a few of these things. On-site search, I think that is a headache that exists for almost every online content platform. Why is search so bad? Why have we not gotten better at it? Well, AI is helping us get better at it. I've worked at places where if I wanted to find a story, it was easier for me to go to Google and search for the story on my own website than it was to use the on-platform search. So that's a huge opportunity that AI can help with. Content curation, so we talked about this a little bit, but also packaging. I don't think a lot of even large and well-budgeted organizations are there yet, but as our CMSs get to know our subscribers better, it can not just say, okay, you read this article about beef Wellington, so I know you're interested, you're not a vegetarian, whatever. Here are some recipes or whatever that you might be interested in. It could create a whole package for you. The whole SIP idea that, I don't know how many of you remember SIPs. Oh my gosh, I love them so much. But an AI could create an SIP for you digitally for your reader based on what they've been reading. As I said, I don't think we're there yet, but the technology is starting to be available much more readily. Something that those of us who went from all print to the onboarding to digital magazines remember manually tagging stories for SEO. AI can do that for us now quite inexpensively. Games are another big area of interest. Thank you, New York Times, again. But the Walrus recently added games. And for large organizations, they'll hire a games editor, and they'll have staff that, in the old-fashioned way, create games. But you can actually use OpenAI and other sources to create games based on your own content. So anyone can have a games section and have the benefit of that on-ramp for new audiences. For those of you who are interested, this is an hour-long chat, but it's embedded here. The Canadian Journalism Foundation had an online workshop that's free for anyone to access about incorporating games into your journalism and best practices with that. I think one of the most important takeaways that I got from it is you can't just add games. They have to be related to your offering. And there are easy ways to do that using the free and inexpensive tools, but you always have to keep that in the forefront of your mind. Otherwise, you may pick up some occasional visitors who are there for the free crossword or your version of Wordle, but they won't care about your content. So you always have to tie it into what you're about. Anyway, it's a good use of an hour if you're interested in experimenting with games. So automated stories. I think I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around this, and how is an automated story different from AI-created content? Well, it's kind of not, but it's more selective about the kind of content that, in the example of the Associated Press, they wouldn't have automated election coverage, but they might use AI to create a summary of sports scores. So as an example, at the Globe and Mail, the sports scores, the weather, those are all syndicated pieces that we get from a content partner. The Globe team does not wait for the sports scores and type it in and then lay it out. It's a time-saving thing. So instead of going to a syndication partner, it's now possible to use an AI to do the scraping of that information and provide it to your audiences. So again, the idea of this is to do the things that AI is supposed to help us do: save labor and time, scale to a larger extent. The downside is it could get things wrong, and that makes you look stupid. It makes your readers frustrated, and you could lose readers if they get frustrated often enough. The main thing about this is, anytime you're going to incorporate AI into your workflow or offering, you need to have clear standards that are published for your staff and that your audiences can access as well, so they know what rules you're playing by, that clearly lay out what are the guardrails. So the Associated Press has been using automated stories since 2014, and they've explained on their website, the link is here, why they do it, which is, it increases their output by a factor of 10, and for things like, I don't know if you remember as a kid reading the newspaper that all these pages of the stock listings. This can be done so much more efficiently with AI and online. But AI can get it wrong if humans are not keeping watch. A lot of us are using Google Analytics and have for a long time for audience measurement. That, without getting into it, it's not my area of expertise, but that continues to get more and more sophisticated and give us more and more information that can help us understand where our audiences are dropping off. Okay, so that story we thought was going to win 12 awards and get read from top to bottom performed very poorly. Let's figure out why. It can give us, it can tell us how far someone read into it, where they were when they were reading it, did they come back to it. E-commerce is becoming easier than ever. I remember back in the day, as a young journalist, seeing the young marketer next to me filling envelopes with merch, manually taking orders, on the phone. E-commerce plugins are so easy to add now that any magazine can consider offering merchandise sales to their audiences, create a sort of a fan culture where people can recognize each other with the tote bags or baseball caps, coffee cups, and also subscriptions. I'm coming to the end of my presentation, but I wanted to share this quote, which is kind of a good watchword. So it's from the head of artificial intelligence and news strategy at Swedish Radio, who says, serious media companies are going in the wrong direction if they see the advent of the generative AI models as a way to start automating their products. We should remember that real journalism is about other stuff. That's a starting point for us, to go back to real hardcore journalism and then see how generative AI models can help us do that better. It's not a replacement, it's an enhancement. So talking very quickly about ethics and audience trust, I touched on some of these things, but AI is already visible enough and in the consciousness of our readers enough that they're quick to suspect anything that seems wooden or looks a bit off as AI. I've actually had a number of Globe readers contact me if a story has a particularly larger than usual number of typos, and many of them have actually said, have you replaced your copy editors with AI? This is inexcusable. So that's not the case, but the fact that they think that is already so damaging, and then how do you get that trust and credibility back? It's really hard to, especially if the next day they read another article with a bunch of typos. Well, it's got to be the AI. They don't care about copy editing anymore. They don't care about grammar anymore. But people are incredibly savvy, and they'll notice a difference. And they're just, as I said, very quick to ascribe it to AI, even if that's not the case. So we have to be very communicative about whether we're using AI. It's pretty common for news organizations to publish their own standards so that readers can access them. When do we use AI? Under what circumstances? How are humans looking at this AI use to ensure that it's accurate, that it meets our broader set of standards? What most of them have in common, even though the standards vary very widely, is that AI can only be used with human oversight. It cannot be a set it and forget it add-on. There always has to be human participation and human sign-off. And whatever you do, be transparent. Whatever you decide the standards and guardrails are in your organization, you need to communicate it. And transparency has been shown to build and retain audience trust. I've shared there a link. Actually, I'll just very quickly go to it, to the Trust Project. This is I think this is a great tool for anyone who creates content. But the Trust Project talked to a number of different news consumers or content consumers at all areas of the spectrum. So people who are voracious consumers and some who are extremely skeptical and rare consumers, to find out what attributes of content are trustworthy. And they boiled it down to 8. So I'm not going to read through all of those, but transparency is incredibly important. And with transparency, hand in hand comes a corrections process. So if you're wrong, admitting that you're wrong as quickly as possible, publishing what you got wrong and what the correct information was. I've got a bunch of examples of published artificial intelligence codes of conduct for those who are interested. Pointer has a free online template for creating your own AI code of conduct, so it's a starting point. You can take or leave parts of it that don't apply to you or that you don't agree with, but it's that, let's ask these questions of ourselves and decide what we're doing here. And to end, another quote. So this Czech public broadcaster they asked AI to write a number of scripts. So they also do dramatic content as well as news content. So they used an AI to create a number of drama scripts. And interestingly, they didn't think that ethically that was questionable, perhaps because it was not news. But they didn't just go ahead and do it and say, oh, this is fine. They thought about the ethics of it. And the chief dramaturg says, it's super important to really make the messaging very clear that this is technology that's meant for people who want to use it. And it's not a technology that needs to be forced on anybody. So I think that's a good guiding principle in your organization. So if there's a tool that you have access to, what this is saying is not everyone needs to use it if you think it's going to be helpful in your work. It's a tool that you have access to. But ask questions, push back.
Thanks, Sandra. On that last note, would you ever consider employing a Sandra.ai to help with those, the influx of emails that you may get complaining about the typos in the articles?
I don't think I can, because the point of a standards editor is to be a live person or team. I know the Guardian's readers editor is the title they use there, and she has a whole team because it's they're international versions of the Guardian. But they respond to pretty much every email they get. And it's really important to know that there's somebody listening and not just an AI. I think that would backfire terribly for the standards editor to have automated answers. That said, I think there are ways to answer questions that don't involve me replying to an email. Like, is there a video series that we could offer, for example, so people can click to, like, how does the globe handle, X? They can click on it and get the answer instead of writing to me. Some people might prefer that. But I think it could be useful for, I don't know, Eric Reguly or any of the foreign correspondents get the same types of questions over and over again. Or they can give some behind the scenes. Here is how I reported this story. I think there are uses for it, but I don't think the standards editor desk is the right place for it.
So this is slightly different than publishers using AI, but it's something that is kind of an interesting conversation within my organization right now. I know that some publishers are signing licensing deals with AI to allow legally those AI companies to train on their archives. Probably what's happening right now without these agreements is they're all like just scraping our content anyways and using it to train their LLMs. And I noticed, I'm not quite made up in my mind about whether we would or would not sign an agreement like that, because our content is probably being used anyways. But I noticed from the journalists in our newsroom a very strong negative reaction upon hearing the news of other publishers doing this, and I asked why. Because I'm in the interest, and we're all in the interest of trying to get paid for as much of our content as possible. And they had a very strong emotional reaction saying they felt that if we did that it would be like training a technology that will eventually replace them, and they found that they would feel betrayed by their employer, by us, if we did something like that. So I was just interested if that's a conversation that's going on in the Globe. Has the Globe signed on to any of these agreements, and is that sort of controversial within the organization?
There have been discussions about it. I think it's controversial in every organization for the reasons that you laid out. I mean, in the magazine world, I remember when we started changing contracts to include online forever use. And that was there was a huge backlash against freelancers who, over the years have seen their compensation shrink and shrink and shrink. So here's one other way that their work is going to be benefited by somebody else. So just on that level, from a pure compensation standpoint, I can understand why reporters and writers are upset about it. I think the jury's out on whether it's a good idea to sign an agreement. It probably is not going to benefit you as an organization that much. If there's something in the agreement that gives you access to a tool that you think is truly useful that you otherwise wouldn't be able to use, then maybe you decide the trade-off is worth it. But I don't think there's an ethical one-size-fits-all answer to that. It really depends on what kind of organization you are and what you think you could get out of it back. Like, it shouldn't be, well, we're all just doing this for the good of future AI. I mean, I would say if that's what you're thinking, which I know is not in your case, if that's what anyone's thinking, I would say just don't do it, because they're probably gaining from you anyway, but why would you contribute to that? If there's something in it for you because they want to use, they're refining a tool, and your content will help them refine the tool, and in exchange you get to use the tool that's truly useful for you, then maybe it's a yes. But I don't know that I really help, because it's one of those sticky things that there's not a clear answer for that works for everybody.